And welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. Obamacare premiums are about to rise as COVID-era tax subsidies are set to expire in 2 months. Lawmakers now weighing how to address the issue, and President Trump proposing Trumpcare. Federal employees are heading back to work as the government reopens, but the effects of the record-long shutdown may linger. A look at the challenges officials may face as they try to catch up. The 2023 Georgia election interference case against President Trump will begin again. Who is the new prosecutor? A breakthrough with Switzerland. The U.S. announcing lower tariffs, while the Swiss promise massive investments and new Boeing purchases. J.D. Vance talks about what he thinks of a potential 2028 presidential run and gives his view on a potential rival for the position.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Friday, November 14th. I'm Paul Graney. Great to have you here. The 2023 Georgia racketeering indictment case against President Trump and several others for their alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election will continue now in the hands of a new prosecutor. The man responsible for finding a new prosecutor, Peter Skandalakis, assigned himself to the job. Skandalakis is the director of the Prosecutor Attorneys Council of Georgia, a bipartisan group of legal experts from across the state. He is replacing Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, who started the case and was later disqualified for an improper relationship with the lead prosecutor. Skandalakis previously said he could also take the case himself if he couldn't find another prosecutor to take it on. President Trump said in a Truth Social post today that he will ask the Justice Department to investigate prominent Democrats' involvement with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The request comes after a congressional committee released thousands of documents that raise new questions about Trump's relationship with Epstein. In the post, Trump accused Democrats of focusing on what he calls the, quote, Epstein hoax to deflect blame for the government shutdown. He mentioned prominent names such as Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, and J.P. Morgan. In a separate post today, Trump said Epstein was a Democrat, and he is the Democrats' problem, not the Republicans' problem. And millions of Americans are facing higher health insurance premiums. In 2 months, COVID-era tax subsidies for Obamacare are set to expire. Lawmakers now weighing how to address the higher costs, with President Trump proposing Trumpcare. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more.
With a freshly reopened government, lawmakers have 2 months to find a path forward on health care. President Trump says he's committed to addressing the issue.
We want a health care system where we pay the money to the people instead of the insurance companies. And I tell you, we're going to be working on that very hard over the next short period of time.
COVID-era tax subsidies, which made Obamacare more affordable, will expire on January 1st.
I expect Republicans to be at the table in the next few weeks. I expect the White House to be at the table. And if they do choose not to come to the table, they can own the disastrous premium increases that will continue to rise.
Senators are expected to vote on an Obamacare extension in December. Bipartisan negotiations are underway.
We have senators, both Democrat and Republican, who are eager to get to work to address that crisis in a bipartisan way. These senators are not interested in political games. They're interested in finding real ways to address health care costs for American families.
While talks look more promising in the Senate, the House shows a stark contrast between the parties.
I'm not going to guarantee a vote on ACA unreformed COVID-era subsidies that is just a boondoggle to insurance companies and robs the taxpayer. We got a lot of work to do on that.
We'll introduce legislation to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years to make sure that tens of millions of Americans don't experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles.
While some moderate Republicans are open to the extensions, many want to reform the program or replace Obamacare altogether.
The healthcare system broke under Obamacare. And as President Trump said, well, I'm not going to repeat his exact words for it, but it's not ideal. And we're going to have to work together to get this fixed because...
President Trump is floating an idea he called Trumpcare in a Fox News interview earlier this week. It would be health accounts for people to pay for medical issues.
Everybody's going to be happy. They're going to feel like entrepreneurs. They're actually able to go out and negotiate their own health insurance. And they can use it only for that reason. That's the beauty, only for that purpose. And if we did that, that would be so exciting. Call it Trumpcare, call it whatever you want to call it. But
Republicans have not yet unveiled concrete legislation. CMS Administrator Mehmet Oz said, "We have lots of great ideas, but I don't want to show our cards." Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
So the federal government is open, but some officials say it's not easy to get everything back to normal. And some furloughed federal workers are returning to hefty to-do lists. Here's a look at some of the challenges they face as they try to catch up.
Some functions of the federal government are getting back online quickly post-shutdown. Others face impediments. The Agriculture Secretary says SNAP benefits should go out by Monday at the latest.
It's moving, it's coming, and for those who really depend on it, good news is on the way.
Officials say certain federal employees should start getting back pay today. Some agencies warn it could take another week to make their staffs whole. Meanwhile, the Smithsonian says it's opening its museums and zoo on a rolling basis starting today. The National Gallery says it'll be fully open by tomorrow. Conservationists say some national parks are dealing with litter and graffiti after operating with skeleton crews. As for air travel, the FAA continues to cut flights as air traffic controllers return to work. But Delta Airlines CEO sounds optimistic.
I think we'll be back a lot faster than people think. Thanksgiving is going to be a great holiday period to travel.
And the U.S. and South Korea have unveiled the framework of a sweeping new trade agreement that includes more than $350 billion in planned Korean investments across American shipbuilding and major industrial sectors.
Project selection will be completed by January 2029, when President Trump's term ends. The funds required for project implementation will be paid within 45 business days after receiving notification of the U.S. investment destination selection.
The announcement follows President Trump's October meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, where the two leaders agreed to cut tariffs on Korean imports from 25% down to 15%. Officials say a new memorandum of understanding outlines dozens of potential projects from shipyards to artificial intelligence and nuclear energy. The deal also opens the door for South Korea to build nuclear-powered submarines and expand fuel processing capabilities. Seoul will phase its cash investments over time to avoid disrupting currency markets. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says Washington and Switzerland have reached a breakthrough in their ongoing trade negotiations. In an interview with CNBC this morning, Greer confirmed that the U.S. will reduce its trade duty on Swiss goods to 15%. In return, Switzerland has agreed to purchase Boeing aircraft and invest up to $200 billion in the United States. He added that additional information will be released soon on the White House website. Switzerland has been subject to a 39% U.S. import tariff since August 7th and has been pushing for that rate to drop to 15%. Swiss industries warn the current tariff is already taking a toll. Exports to the U.S. were down 14% last quarter, and machinery shipments down 43%.
Swiss, as part of their agreement, they've said we are going to have $200 billion in investment, during President Trump's term, starting with about $70 billion investment next year, and it will be in these areas. So Roche, for example, sign of goodwill, has already broken ground on a new facility, pharmaceutical facilities. And with respect to gold, there's a lot of gold smelting that goes on in Switzerland, and there's at least one Swiss company that has committed to put their gold smelting operation right here in the United States, which makes sense for a lot of reasons. So we expect by the end of President Trump's term for that trade deficit with Switzerland to be eliminated because of these kinds of moves.
And Vice President J.D. Vance sat down with Sean Hannity and was asked about a potential 2028 presidential run. He said it's not the first thing on his mind right now, but here he is speaking on Fox News.
I really want us to win the midterms, because if the Democrats get in power, they're going to try to screw up a lot of the great things the President of the United States has done over the past 10 months. Again, trees that have been planted, some of which won't even bear fruit for a few years. I don't want the Democrats to screw that up. So we're going to win the midterms. We're going to do everything that we can to win the midterms. And then after that, I'm going to sit down with the President of the United States and talk to him about it.
Vance was also asked if he sees Secretary of State Marco Rubio as a future rival for president in 2028. But he said that's not something to think about right now, and instead described how close he and Rubio's family are, and said Rubio acted as a kind of mentor to him when they were in Congress together. Hannity and Vance discussed President Trump's energy and work ethic. Vance said cabinet members told him on long flights Trump doesn't get tired, and if Trump isn't sleeping, everyone else is expected to stay up and work too. Vance also said Trump has an incredible ability to read people and predict what they might say about an issue, levels above anything he's ever seen. And police shoot dead a 20-year-old man who allegedly threatened to shoot up a hospital and then shot at responding officers.
The officers exited their vehicles, and the individual immediately discharges the firearm at the officers, with multiple civilians in close proximity who had just gotten off an MTA bus. The officers return fire and strike the individual.
According to the New York Post, the suspect first pulled a gun on someone in the elevator of a residential building of Manhattan yesterday. Then he made a similar move at a nearby deli while threatening to shoot up a hospital next. He also stole a worker's phone. He then went out into and back into Mount Sinai Medical Center and had a physical confrontation with a security guard. The guard is also a member of the New York City Police Department. He called for backup. The suspect walked out, grabbed his gun off the ground from a nearby tree outside, and continued walking. Witnesses told the Post that they saw someone casually walking down the street with his gun out, and when police caught up to him, he immediately started shooting at them on a busy street. They responded with gunfire and killed him. His identity has not been revealed pending family notification. We'll keep you updated. Incredible. And former football coach John Beam, who was shot and injured yesterday on the campus of Lanley College in Oakland, California. John Beam was featured in the Netflix docuseries Last Chance U, which shines a spotlight on community college athletes aiming to turn their lives around. He retired as head football coach last year, but remains the school's athletic director. Officials with the Peralta Community College District, which includes Lanley, say the shooting happened just before midday at the school's sports complex. Police say Beam was hospitalized. Details on his condition or a motive for the shooting haven't yet been released, and no suspect has been identified. America's First Amendment guarantees freedom of belief and freedom of the press. Our next guest sits at the nexus of both. He's here to discuss freedom of speech in the media and how changes in technology and policy are reshaping how Americans get their news and information. Troy Miller is the president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters Group, and he's here with us in studio. Troy, great to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, been too long. Troy, a lot to get to. You guys are doing great work at NRB. Want to get there eventually. But I think the big news, we know President Trump is threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion. They edited his January 6th speech in such a way that made it seem like he was inciting violence. Now, I like to listen to the news on the radio on my way to work. And one story, it framed this as an attack on freedom of speech and that the BBC should stand up to President Trump on this issue. Now, you represent broadcasters, not the BBC, but broadcasters generally here in the United States. How do you see this issue?
Yeah, we do. We represent over 1,600 broadcasters here in the U.S. Look, this issue, we are a staunch defender of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, free exercise thereof, and freedom of the press because we have a number of Christian entities that produce news. But you can't distort the news. That's pretty clear, even in the FCC regulations, that you can't purposely take the news and distort it for reasons, for unobjective reasons, or to target somebody. So, look, the BBC was wrong here. I hear they apologized today. That's a good first step. But the president's right. This was defamation.
It wouldn't be the first if Trump were to win this case against the BBC, if it goes ahead. It wouldn't be the first one he's won in recent times. Are you seeing major changes broadly in the media landscape since Trump got back into power?
Well, I think the media knows that they can't push their propaganda as much as they used to, and they're going to have to report. Look, you can have opinion pieces in the news, right? You can have opinions, you can do op-eds, you can do all of those things. But again, you can't distort the news in such a way that you defame a person or that person's character. So hopefully we're going to see the mainstream media bring that ethic back up to the Walter Cronkite days, where a lot of people didn't know how liberal he was because he simply reported the news. Incredible,
yeah, and we hope for that to come back again. Troy, like I mentioned, I enjoy listening to the FM radio in my car on the way to work. I connect with the people on the other side of the airwaves in a way that digital just doesn't allow me to do. But it seems like in the newer cars with the new technology, I may not be able to get FM radio anymore. Tesla, I believe in their new models, are not going to have a radio.
That's right. So it started with AM radio, and the car manufacturer said, we're going to take AM radio out. AM radio is antiquated. It's interfering with the electrical cars. And we said, no, it's really not about AM radio being antiquated or interfering. It's a very small part to take care of that. And we've said all along, this is about who's going to control the information in the dashboard of the car. It's called the connected dash. It's not about AM radio. And then certainly Tesla comes along and says, hey, now we're going to take out FM radio out of all the new models, so we won't have FM radio. So now there is no choice to get free over-the-air broadcasting in your Tesla vehicle. Well, we've seen that other manufacturers, Ford followed that, and we had a big argument with them to keep AM radio in. And now GM says we're going to take out CarPlay and we're going to take out Android Auto. That way they can control the dash. So we're fighting to say that there ought to be a choice in the car for free over-the-air broadcasting.
And obviously, because a big part of our viewership comes from broadcasting as well. Over-the-air broadcast is a big part of our viewership. Are broadcasters coming to you? They're worried about these technologies not being maintained and being unable to reach these people?
Yeah, look, Congress, when they established the initial broadcasting regulations and codes, they recognized that there was a public interest obligation there to have free over-the-air broadcasting. And so the people of all economic groups, of all racial groups, anybody could access that information. And we're seeing a real move now with everything going to this subscription service that we're going to disenfranchise and really limit a large number of society from being able to get to information simply because they can't afford it.
So then, Troy, how do you balance ensuring this happens with businesses' right to operate their businesses as they see fit?
We do balance it there, but the government's always had a regulatory role. Now, we're a very limited government entity, but you have to look at that role when the businesses really disenfranchise so many people. There is a role for the government to step in. The AM for every car bill has a 10-year sunset in it in order for the manufacturers and the AM industry to work out how that transition is going to go.
Shifting gears a little bit, Troy, we had recently Senator Jim Jordan, Congressman Jim Jordan. He came out and he said that YouTube has agreed to reinstate any channels which had been banned for sharing information about COVID or fraud during the 2020 election. This was seen as a big win. The YouTube and Facebook, they came out and they said that the previous administration had pressured them into censorship. Since Jim Jordan's announcement, are you seeing any tangible changes in how people are allowed to share their information freely on these platforms?
Well, we're hopeful that that's going to get implemented, but we haven't really seen any changes at this point. Thanks for the senator and thankful for the administration who really did end the weaponization of the government against particularly Christian content and Christian content creators. So we're happy that Pam Bondi is leading up, our Attorney General is leading up a group into that, investigating that. So we hope that goes. But there's still a lot of work. There's still algorithms out there that show a lot of bias against Christian programming, especially if you're going to talk about pro-life, pro-family, or talk about there's only two genders, male and female. You're probably going to get pushed down in the search engine or not found altogether.
So in the past, this was described as a conspiracy theory. There's no censorship of this type of content. But you're saying not only was it happening then, but even after these announcements, you're seeing examples of it still happening now.
We're still seeing it on the algorithms. We're still getting ministries reporting to us that their content is getting suppressed or they've gotten removed altogether off of the platforms.
Incredible. Troy, you guys have a very interesting and I think valuable initiative starting. You want to connect veterans back with the church again. What inspired the NRB to start this, and what positions you guys as a group of broadcasters to actually execute this well?
Well, a couple of things. First, I'm a Navy veteran myself, and so veterans are very near and dear to me. But look, we're losing 17 veterans a day to suicide, drug overdose. They have the highest rates of depression, some of the highest rates of divorce that are going on, and they feel lonely. 60% of veterans say it's very hard to integrate back into society. And so we as the church have always been the most charitable organization across the country. So we're calling on churches to reach out to veterans, to give veterans a home, a place to feel involved, to have a mission, to feel a purpose. The gospel provides all of those things for that. Plus, churches have the resources to come alongside these people. Look, the government's doing a great job of that, but we need to step up and do a job as well. So we've launched this initiative. You can go to nrb.org/veterans, and we'll help connect you to hundreds of veterans organizations across the country so you don't have to do it alone in your church.
Well, that's interesting you said it, Troy. The government is doing a great job on it, but us, the private citizens, I think more chatter I hear recently since the government shutdown that Americans need to get back to this idea of self-reliance and doing things themselves. But finally, NRB. Why NRB? What gives you guys the tools and the resources to execute this?
Well, because we have a very large voice. Our members reach 94 million households every month across the country. We have hundreds of churches that are involved with us and denominations. So we're using that voice, that large voice of ours, to help veterans across this country.
Finally, you guys represent so many broadcasters. We have the new administration has been in power, 8 months or so now, 9 months. What policies or what do you want to see happen over the next 3 years?
First of all, the FCC has done an outstanding job. Chairman Carr has really helped deregulate and take a lot of burdens off of broadcasters. We'd love to see that continue, that deregulation, to make it easier, friendlier business environment for us to do. Plus, we want to see where this technology moves and where the public interest programming is going to fall out. There's a lot of things going on in commercial programming, but where's the nonprofit public interest programming going to have its place in this new digital streaming world?
Big question. Troy Miller with the National Religious Broadcasters. Thank you, Troy.
Thanks for having me.
And from major takedowns to rewarding loyal employees, it was an eventful week for the Department of Homeland Security. NTD's Daniel Monahan has a closer look, including a sting that nabbed more than 150 alleged sex offenders.
Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem awarded checks to 24 TSA agents at Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport.
What I'm so proud of, though, today, and what I'm here talking about today, is the outstanding patriotism and service of our TSA officers and officials that stepped up every single day.
Noem says the payments recognize employees who went above and beyond while working without pay during the shutdown.
For stepping up, taking on extra shifts, for showing up each and every day, for serving the American people.
Secretary Noem said the department will continue awarding bonuses to TSA employees who showed exemplary performance. From the friendly skies to the criminal underworld, Noem also praised DHS law enforcement officers for what she called heroic arrests during the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Those arrested included Victor Manuel Mendoza Garcia, an illegal immigrant from Mexico, convicted of 3 counts of aggravated kidnapping and ransom in Cook County, Illinois, and William Giovanni Lopez Fuentes, an illegal immigrant from Guatemala, convicted of assault of a child in Sunbury, Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, in a major bust, DHS announced the arrest of more than 150 sex offenders who are illegal immigrants. Noem commented on the operation during an interview on Fox News.
These individuals should have never been in our country to begin with. The fact that they were sexual deviants and perverts, and now we've gotten them off of our streets, it's remarkable, and we need to do more of it.
The operation targeted child predators, rapists, and violent offenders with convictions ranging from sexual assault of minors and child exploitation to rape and attempted homicide. In total, more than 230 criminal illegal immigrants were arrested. Noem didn't hide her feelings about those crimes.
This operation was called Operation Criminal Return. I call it Operation Dirtbag, because these individuals were sex offenders, but not just sex offenders, they targeted children.
And DHS also uncovered alleged crimes at the ballot box. The department released new voting records tied to Jose Ceballos Armendariz, a 54-year-old Mexican immigrant accused of voting illegally in multiple Kansas elections. He faces felony charges including 3 counts of voting without being qualified and 3 counts of election perjury. Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin says President Trump and Secretary Noem granted states access to the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements program, known as SAVE, to help confirm voter eligibility. McLaughlin says SAVE is a critical tool for state and local governments to safeguard election integrity. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And another case of a federal judge squaring off against the Trump administration. A judge ruled yesterday that hundreds of illegal immigrants held by ICE in Illinois must be released on bond. District Judge Jeffrey Cummings issued the ruling in response to a lawsuit filed by the National Immigrant Justice Center and the American Civil Liberties Union. More than 3,000 illegal immigrants were arrested between June and October, and the ruling states that 615 of them were not subject to mandatory detention. But the DHS argued that all of those detained fell under the mandatory detention. The judge rejected that argument, though. He ordered DHS to release all those not deemed a high public safety risk on a $1,500 bond by next week. We'll keep you updated. And Walmart is about to enter a new era. The retailer announced this morning that its CEO is retiring next year. Doug McMillon started off as a store associate and climbed the ladder to eventually become CEO in 2014. Since then, the company's stock has risen 300%. John Furner, who heads Walmart's U.S. operations, will take over as company CEO in February. McMillon will stay on the board until next summer and will be an advisor to Furner through 2027 fiscal year. The U.S. is dropping a plan to require passenger compensation for delayed flights. The Department of Transportation made the announcement earlier today. And in December of last year, the Transportation Department under the Biden administration proposed the idea of mandatory compensations. Airlines would have had to pay up to $300 for domestic delays of at least 3 hours and almost $800 for longer delays. Today, the Transportation Department announced the plan won't move forward, saying it would result in unnecessary regulatory burdens. Airlines in the U.S. must refund passengers for canceled flights, but are not required to compensate customers for delays. The European Union, Canada, Brazil, and Britain all have airline delay compensation rules, but no large U.S. airline currently guarantees cash compensation for significant flight disruption. And the man who murdered 4 University of Idaho students in 2023 has been ordered by a judge to pay for another expense related to the victims' burials. The judge's ruling yesterday follows a hearing last month. Prosecutors say Kohberger should reimburse the families of 2 of the victims roughly $3,000 to cover the expense of the urns that hold their ashes. Kohberger had already been ordered to pay more than $30,000 in restitution. That was as part of his plea agreement, which took the death penalty off the table. Attorneys for Kohberger said he doesn't have the funds to cover the expenses. The judge, though, not swayed. In a written ruling, he noted Kohberger can raise the necessary money by getting a job in prison or ask for donations. And police in Atlanta say a group of brave civilians saved the life of one of their officers. Last month, Atlanta police officer Malik Safi was responding to a call for backup when his patrol vehicle crashed and burst into flames. The police body cam shows there was residents in the area who sprung into action. They broke a window, pulled Officer Safi from the burning cruiser, and used his radio to call for help. They then had to move the officer again when witnesses say his gun, which was inside the burning vehicle, started firing. The police department, in a Facebook post, thanked the residents involved. for what it called their extraordinary courage. Russia launched a massive drone and missile attack on Kyiv early this morning. The strike killed at least 6 people and wounded dozens. Here's more.
One of Russia's biggest attacks on Kyiv lit up the Ukrainian capital's night sky early on Friday. Ukraine officials said the massive attack, involving over 400 drones, killed several people as it targeted energy facilities, apartment buildings and infrastructure. Anastasia described the moment her apartment block was hit.
I was terrified. So terrified I didn't know what to do first. Should I rescue myself and my child? Or should I run to help others because many people were screaming and needed help?
The Air Force said most of the drones and missiles were shot down, but officials said falling debris and fires damaged high-rise apartments, a school, a medical facility and administrative buildings across 9 districts in the city of about 3 million. The city's heating and power systems were damaged in the attack, cutting supply to many. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kyiv was responding with long-range strikes and urged allies to toughen sanctions on Russia. Kyiv has ramped up its own drone attacks deep inside Russia, aiming to knock out oil refineries, depots and pipelines and cripple Moscow's biggest source of funding for its war in Ukraine.
And North Korean troops helped Russia repel a major Ukrainian incursion into its western Kursk region. Now Moscow says they're playing an important role in clearing the area of mines. Here are the details.
Video published by the Russian Defense Ministry on Friday showed North Korean troops being trained to detect different types of landmines and how to use mine detection equipment. The Defense Ministry said Pyongyang's forces were playing an important role in clearing Russia's Kursk region of the explosives left after a Ukrainian surprise incursion last year. Ukrainian troops smashed through the Russian border in August 2024 and held substantial pockets of Russian territory for months. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in April that Moscow had finally pushed them out with the help of North Korean soldiers. North Korea last year sent some 14,000 soldiers to fight alongside Russia in Kursk. South Korean, Ukrainian, and Western sources say more than 6,000 were killed. Russian military news outlet Krasnaya Zvezda said the Russian and North Korean soldiers were dealing with a previously unseen density of anti-tank and anti-personnel mines left behind by Ukrainian forces in Kursk. The significant North Korean role in Russia's demining operations highlights the desire for both sides to further develop their military ties, which North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said last month would advance non-stop.
The Chinese Communist Party gives the Venezuelan regime an economic lifeline as the Trump administration ramps up pressure on the foreign terrorist organization it says is led by Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
The Chinese Communist Party has announced a zero-tariff agreement with the Venezuelan regime on over 400 categories of products. The move throws an economic lifeline to the Venezuelan regime, which will allow them to buy Chinese products at discounted prices and would allow the Chinese Communist Party greater control over the South American country's economy.
Venezuela right now is a safe haven where Hezbollah, Hamas, the drug cartels, the Colombian guerrilla operate freely, and they are part of this liaison with the regime.
The CCP has lent over $60 billion to the Venezuelan regime over the past 2 decades. It has also endowed the Venezuelan National Guard with equipment to repress its citizenry, and it has built a ground satellite station in Venezuela, allowing the Chinese Communist Party a foothold in the Western Hemisphere.
It's been America first, peace through strength, common sense, revive the warrior ethos, rebuild the military, reestablish deterrence. We're going to defend the homeland. We're going to deter China. We're going to make sure our allies do their part in burden sharing, and we're going to revive the defense industrial base.
The Trump administration has zeroed in on the links in between the Venezuelan regime and the Chinese Communist Party and directed the Department of War to counter the malign influence stemming from foreign terrorist organizations operating from Venezuela and by the Venezuelan regime.
Now, imperialism is inventing an even more bizarre narrative. Since they cannot say that Maduro has weapons of mass destruction, since they cannot say that we have hidden biological or chemical weapons, They invent a bizarre narrative.
My advice to foreign terrorist organizations, do not get in a boat. I mean, if you're trafficking drugs to poison the American people, and we know you're from a designated terrorist organization, you're a foreign terrorist and a trafficker, we will find you and we will kill you.
The Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, who is in hiding in Venezuela, has thanked the Trump administration for their support.
Finally, a leadership that is addressing this tragic situation in Venezuela that has been evolving for 26 years, as it should. We have been asked that this criminal structure be addressed using law enforcement.
This week, the USS Gerald S. Ford, the largest and most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, enters Southern Command's area of operation to support operations against foreign terrorist organizations in the region. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And the U.S. has approved a proposed $330 million sale of fighter jets and aircraft parts to Taiwan. It's the first such move since President Trump took office. The Pentagon says the sale will help Taiwan keep its F-16S, C-130s, and some other aircraft ready to meet future and current threats. Taipei thanked Washington, saying the deal continues the long-standing U.S. policy of providing Taiwan with the means to defend itself and deepens a security partnership it calls essential to stability in the Indo-Pacific. Taiwan's defense ministry says the parts will boost fighter readiness and strengthen air defenses. They will also help the island counter China's escalating, quote, gray zone incursions, the near daily pressure campaigns Beijing conducts around the island. China reacted angrily, repeating its claim that Taiwan is its territory and calling the issue the core of China's national interests. Meanwhile, Japan today repeated that its position on Taiwan remained unchanged.
Peace and security in the Taiwan Strait is vital for Japan's security, but also for the stability of the international community. The government of Japan has consistently maintained the position that we expect issues concerning Taiwan to be resolved through peaceful dialogue.
Again, Japan says it has consistently maintained its position that the issue should be resolved through peaceful dialogue. The spat between Beijing and Tokyo was sparked by Japanese leader Sane Takaichi. She made the remarks in Parliament last week that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could amount to a survival-threatening situation and trigger a military response from Tokyo. Japanese broadcaster Nippon TV reported today that the Chinese embassy in Tokyo had instructed staff to avoid going out because of concerns about rising anti-China sentiment. And French police shot and wounded a knife-wielding man at a Paris train station this morning. The Paris prosecutor's office said an officer used his weapon on the man, who then inflicted knife wounds on himself. The prosecutor's office said at least one gunshot was heard. One witness said they heard several shots. The man was known to police for domestic violence. Shohei Ohtani was unanimously named the winner of the National League MVP award. It marks his third straight MVP award and fourth overall. This makes him only the second player in Major League Baseball history with at least 4 MVPs, behind Barry Bonds, who has 7. The Dodgers superstar previously won 2 American League MVPs with the Los Angeles Angels before joining the Dodgers. After the switch, he won the National League MVP award in 2024 and helped the Dodgers win the World Series in both of his seasons with them. A highlight this year was a historic game against the Milwaukee Brewers in October, where he hit 3 home runs and struck out 10 batters in 6 innings. Kai Trump, eldest granddaughter of President Trump, made her LPGA debut yesterday at the Anica in Bel Air, Florida. The 18-year-old amateur played on a sponsor's exemption and posted a 13 over par 83, the highest score of the day, placing her at the bottom of a field packed with top talent. Kai Trump opened with 4 straight bogeys before a par at the par 5 14th. She went on to mix 2 bogeys with a pair of pars over her next 4 holes. That included an impressive up and down to save par at the 16th. The appearance comes one day after the University of Miami announced she has committed to play for the Hurricanes starting in the 2026-2027 season. And a pivotal step in the ongoing space race as Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket lifts 2 NASA spacecraft towards Mars. The rocket lifted off from Florida yesterday, and the launch followed several days of delays caused by bad weather and strong solar activity, the latter being responsible for recent aurora sightings far out of their normal range. In a major milestone, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin successfully landed the reusable booster on an ocean platform. The company's first attempt in January failed. NASA's twin Escapade orbiters will first spend a year in a holding orbit near Earth before heading to Mars once the 2 planets align. They will study how solar wind and magnetic forces erode the planet's atmosphere, clues to how Mars went from warm and wet to cold and dry. Scientists will also learn how to best protect astronauts against Mars' harsh radiation environment. The spacecraft are set to reach Mars in 2027. In a social media post, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk congratulated his competitor Jeff Bezos and the Blue Origin team. And London's Kew Gardens is getting ready to sparkle for the holiday season. An enchanting nighttime trail will bring the gardens to life with color, sound, and shimmering displays. Here's a closer look.
The display includes a light show on Temperate House, various light installations, a dance floor, and an orchestra made of lights illuminating the after-dark landscape of the gardens.
This year we've got 8 world-exclusive installations as part of the event. That includes bespoke things like the Palm House show behind me. We've put a bridge over the Palm House pond. We have an orchestra made of lights. We've got blooms blowing in the air. Mycelium networks reaching out from under tree trunks. I think one of the things I like about Christmas at Kew is that it has very gentle moments like the one behind me, which is very contemplative, but there's also really fun and jazzy bits. So we've got a dance floor. We're encouraging people to dance along with giant headphones. But I think if I had to pick a favorite, the mycelium network is really beautiful. It kind of explores the network underground between mushrooms. It just feels so fitting at Kew, so, the home of the fungarium.
Now in its 13th year, Christmas at Kew began as an initiative to attract guests at a traditionally quiet time for the gardens.
And what was once the quietest time of year at Kew is now one of the busiest. We have more than 300,000 people that are going to be coming over the next 49 nights to see this amazing show.
Christmas at Kew opens to the public today and runs until Sunday, January 4th, 2026.
And Shen Performing Arts has dazzled audiences worldwide with the extraordinary skill and grace of its classical Chinese dancers. Now, for a limited time, viewers have a rare chance to see what makes their performances so breathtaking in a special Mid-Autumn Festival Technique Showcase premiering November 15th on the video platform Ganjing World. Here's an early look. Watch the exclusive premiere on November 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern on Ganjing World.